So the image cropper that I'm going to show you guys how you can make is this. So this is my current profile picture, and when I click on choose and suppose let me select this image, well, that's me, of course. So as you can see, when I have selected a new image, this zoom bar appears. So the use of the zoom bar is to just zoom the image. Okay, so let me correct this a bit. And when when the editing is done, I can just click on change and it will upload my image to the S3 bucket. But in our case, there will be no change or upload button, but instead there will be a download button. So see, the image has updated. So in case if you all are wondering what this website is, then this is a product of a Bangalore based company in which I worked as a full stack developer intern for 6 months. So I'm not going to talk much about this today. I will keep this for some future videos. But yeah, basically the image cropper that we're going to make today is this. Oh, sorry, not this. It's this, right? So yeah, let's get started. I have downloaded the React boilerplate code using the create react app command, and you can also do the same. After that, I have created a folder called utils, and inside of this folder I have added these two files. These two files are very important because it contains some functions. For example, like the download function and a function to get the cropped image. So you will get to know the use of these functions later on in the project. So it's very important to get these two files. You can find these files in the GitHub repository that I will be linking down in the description. So please get these files before you start on with the project. So now let's start. I'm gonna name this div as let's say container, and inside of this container I'm going to create two more divs. The first one will be container cropper and the second one will be container buttons. So the container cropper div will have the cropper and the let me select an image. The container cropper will have the cropper and the zoom bar, and the container buttons will have these two buttons, right? So now I'm going to install two packages. One is React Easy Crop and the other one is Material UI. So the React Easy Crop package will help us to make the cropper, and the Material UI will help us to show the slider and the buttons. Of course, the Material UI part is fully optional. You can use it if you want, and if you do not, then you're free to skip. But I would suggest you use it because the slider component of Material UI is very handy in this project. So now I will run the project. npm run start. Yeah, the project has started, and yeah, I have changed the default title to image cropper in zoom. So now let's import the button component from Material UI. And the first button will be the choose button, and the second one will be the download button. So let's check. Okay, I'm so sorry. The naming will be a bit different. It will be button. So now if you see here, I have two buttons, but there are no background color in it. So let's add some background color to the buttons. So I will change the variant to contained, and if I save it, then yeah, now these buttons have some background color in it, but still it's the default color. So I'm going to change the choose button color into something different. I'm going to name it as primary and the download button as secondary. So now we have two very beautiful buttons. You can of course check the documentation in Material UI for the button component. So the second thing that now I'm going to do is I need a input type file, because I need a pop-up to select the file, right? So I'm gonna need an input tag over here, and this input tag will accept all images. So this input tag will accept all valid extensions of images, not only JPG, PNG, but all valid image extensions. So now let's check it once more. Yes, it is working. So now what I want is that if you like see the final project, then you can see that there is no input tag over here. I am triggering that pop-up using the choose button. So let's achieve this similar functionality. So for this I'm going to use a hook called useRef. So let's name it as input ref, and I'm gonna assign this input ref to this input tag, which will help us to create a reference of this input tag itself. So now I've created a reference, and now I'm gonna trigger that pop-up from this choose button. To achieve this, we're gonna need a function. Let's name the function as trigger pop-up, or let's name it as trigger file select pop-up, right? So the function body will have input ref dot current dot click, and we're gonna call this function on the button component. So now if I go to a project, then I should have, yeah, it's working fine. So now we do not need this choose file component over here, so I'm just gonna hide it. Okay, it's unnecessary now. But yeah, you cannot delete this component because we are indirectly triggering the pop-up from this component itself. So I'm gonna do display none. Yes, now the input tag is gone. Now we can work on our cropper component. So I'm gonna import cropper from React Easy Crop, and also the slider from Material UI. And I'm going to define the cropper component inside the container cropper diff. And I think I should get an error, yes, because the cropper component needs some props, but here I did not pass any props. So let's pass the props that the cropper component needs. But before that, I have to create some states. So the first state will be image and set image, and its initial value will be null. So the use of this state is to basically store the file that we will select using the choose button, right? The second state will be crop area and set cropped area. And its initial value will be, let's say, null. Okay. The third state will be crop, set crop, and its initial value will be an object whose x property equals to 0 and y will also be 0. The fourth state will be const zoom and set zoom, and its initial value will be 1. Now I'm going to pass image, crop and zoom as props to the cropper component. The fourth prop will be aspect, and it requires any value which results to 1, right? So you can also give 4 by 4 because the result is 1 when you divide 4 by 4. You can also give 5 by 5 or even 2 by 2, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to give it as 1. The reason for this to be 1 is that we want a square cropper, right? So let me select a file, and this is the cropper that I was talking about. As you can see, the size of this cropper is a square, and when we give it as maybe 2, then the cropper will come in the form of a rectangle, which we don't want. So we will give it as 1, and it will have some more additional props. I mean, the cropper component will have some more additional props. So the 5th prop will be on crop change, and it will get the set crop function. The 6th prop will be on zoom change, and it will get the set zoom function. And the final prop will be on crop complete, and I will pass a function, let's say on crop complete. So I have not yet created a function by the name of on crop complete, so let's first create that. I'm not gonna write the body of the function right now because we have another function which is more important at this stage. I'm gonna name it as const on select file, and this function will be called on the input tag. So here I am basically saying that whenever we select a file, we want the on select file to run. So this function will receive an event. So let's console.log the event. So I'm going to select a file, and yes, this is the event that we receive. So the property, or you can say the value that we're interested in, is inside of the target object, and it is called files. So the file that we just selected is inside of the files object. So this is the name of the file, the size, the type. So now I'm going to write an if statement which will basically check if we have selected a file or not. And if we have selected a file, then it will run the code which will be inside of the if statement. So now I'm going to create an object out of the new file reader constructor, and the use of this constructor is to basically read files asynchronously, and also I'm going to read the file as a data URL. If you see here, then you can see that the file is in the form of an object, right? But we need the file to be in the form of a data URL, and in order to do that, we use the function, or you can say the method that we get on our reader object. So it will be event.target.files 0, and we are also going to add an event listener which will listen for the load event, and it basically says that when the file is finished reading, then we run a callback. And inside of this callback, I'm going to write set image equal to the value, or you can say the data URL that we get. So here I am assigning the data URL that we get after reading the file to the image state. So let's console.log the data URL so that you get an idea. So this is the data URL that I was talking about, and its size is 591 KB. One thing that you should remember is that the size of the data URL is always greater than the file that you selected. So in this case, if I check the size of this file, and it will be around 433 KB, right? And our data URL size is 591 KB. The reason for this is whenever we read a file as a data URL, it's encoded in a base64 format. So this additional, you can say, encoding makes the file size larger than its original size, right? So yeah, it is done, and I think now, yes, we are getting our image and also the cropper with it. right? But we still did not write the body of the onCropComplete function. So let's do that. This onCropComplete function will receive two parameters. The first one will be cropped area percentage, and the second one will be cropped area pixels. And here I'm gonna write set cropped area, and we can choose either of these two parameters. I'm gonna choose cropped area pixels. So whenever we finished cropping our image, it will set the cropped size to the cropped area state, right? So let's console.log the these two parameters. So yeah, so this is the size of the cropper, or you can say the position of the cropper. The first one is in the form of a percentage, and the second one is in the form of pixels. So we are interested in the pixel one because here I am using the pixels, not the percentage. So when we like crop and release the mouse, this console.log gets triggered. So we are basically running this function after we finished cropping, right? So our cropper is basically done. Now we are only left with applying some CSS to our project and also writing the download function. But first let's write some CSS because this looks very ugly, right? Actually, I've noticed a bug. The slider should appear only when there is any image selected, right? Like here, as you can see, the slider is visible because the image is there. But here, we don't have any image, but still the slider is visible. So in order to fix this, I just have to wrap these two components inside of a condition. And the condition will be, if there is any image selected, then we want these two components to appear, or else we just want null, right? So this should fix this, yes, and it has fixed it. So now it's time to apply some CSS. I'm seeing some default padding and margin. So in order to remove this, I just have to go to my index.css file and write few lines of CSS. Margin will be 0, padding will also be 0. And yeah, it has removed the default padding and margin. So now I want these two buttons to appear at the bottom and our cropper to be at the top of those buttons. So let's check how it is looking now. Okay, so the cropper is taking the full page, right? So we have to fix this. I'm gonna wrap my cropper component inside of a diff whose class name will be cropper, and also the slider component whose class name will be slider. So now we have two divs inside of the container class, right? So the CSS file will be app.css, and inside of this I will give some height to the container class. I'm gonna give a height of 100 vh and a width of 100 vw or view width. So yeah, the container cropper will have a height of 90%, and the container buttons class will have a height of 10%. Yes, the buttons are now at the bottom of the page. I also want a margin to appear at the top of the buttons container. So I will write border 1px solid hash f5 f5 f5. So this will give me a margin, a very thin light margin over the buttons container, right? And now I want these buttons to be at the center of the container. So to do that, I will just write display flex align item center justify content center. So now the buttons are at the center of this container. I also want some gap between these two buttons. So in order to do that, I can just apply some CSS to the button component itself. So style will be margin right of, let's say, 10 pixels. So yes, we have some gap now. So now let's go to our container cropper and apply some CSS there. So now I'm going to give a height of 90% to the cropper class and a height of 10% to the slider class. So this is basically saying 90% of the height of the container cropper class and 10% of the height of the container cropper class. So please do not get confused between all these heights, right? So now let's check how our cropper looks. Okay, it is still taking the full height and width of our page. So let's debug the problem. Okay, so I'm seeing a position absolute over here, right? So I'm assuming I have to give a position relative to the cropper class. So let's do that. Position of relative. And yes, it has fixed the problem, but it is still occupying the full width. I'm gonna give a padding to the container cropper. So this way it will apply some padding to both the slider and cropper class. Padding of 10 pixels. So yes, it looks much better now. I'm also gonna center the slider. So this slider is occupying this whole height, I mean the remaining height. So I'm gonna center it by just doing display flex align item center and justify content center. So now it is at the center of the container. The width is just too much. Okay, I'm also seeing a bug. The slider is not working, but let's skip that for later and give some width, I mean decrease the width of the slider. So I'm gonna give it as let's say 60%. Okay, it will not be justify content, it will be margin auto. Yes, the slider is now at the center of the container. So now the slider is not working, as you can see. So I think I haven't passed any props to the slider component. I just forgot it so badly. I'm so sorry, guys. So the first prop will be 1, min equal to 1. Second will be max equal to, let's say, 3. I mean the slider has a mean value of 1 and the maximum it can go is 3. So this mean value has to be equal to our zoom value, right? So the max is 3. So basically we can zoom our image 3 times, not more than that. Of course you can change this number if you want more zoom, but I recommend you keep it at 3 because if you will have more zoom then the image might pixelate. Step will be 0.1, value will be zoom, on change will be it will receive 2 parameters. And I think now the slider should work. Yes, the slider is working. So in case if you're wondering what is the step, so the step is like when we're dragging the slider, as you can see, it just moves, right? I mean it directly switches the position. It's not that smooth. So this is just that. So we are moving the slider by 0.1 every time we like drag our slider. So our project is basically done. Now it's time to write the download function. So basically when we click on download, I want this area inside the cropper to be downloaded in the form of an image, right? So let's write our download function. I'm gonna name the function as let's say on download, and this function will be called on the download button. So guys, if you remember, I told you about these two files at the starting of the video. So now is the time where we will utilize these two files. So if I open the first file, which is crop image, this file has a function called generate download. So I will use this function to download our picture, or you can say the edited photo. So now I'm going to import that function, import generate download from utils crop image, and then I will call the function here. So this function accepts two parameters. One is image src and the second one is crop. So image src is basically the image, right? And the crop is the cropped area. So here I will pass the image as the first parameter, and the second parameter will be cropped area. Now our download function should work. So if I click on download, yes, I am getting the pop-up from where I can save my image. So the default name is image.jpg. So let me save the file, and yes, I have successfully downloaded the cropped image. So guys, our project is done, and there are some small things that I have to say to you all guys. If you want the default name to be something else, so in my case it is image. So if you want this to be something else, then you can just go to the crop image file and change this name over here in the generate download function. So as I have written here as image.jpg, I'm getting my default name as image.jpg. So you can change it to your liking. You can give any name, and the default name will be that. And also one more important thing is that the .to blob is a method on the canvas object, right? And it accepts three parameters. The first one is the callback function. The second one is the type of the image, I mean the file extension of the image. So in my case I have given as jpeg. You can put it as png or any valid image file extension. And the third parameter is the quality of the file. So here it is 0.66, which basically means 66%. So the third parameter can have a value between 0 and 1. So when you give it as 1, the quality will be 100%, and the size of the image will increase drastically, right? So now I have a size of 89 KB, but if you give it as, let's say, 1, the size will increase. So let's check it out, right? Open download. So now as you can see, when I give the value as 1, the size just increased so drastically. Like it's now 851 KB, and here it is just 89 KB. So you can see the difference in the size, right? So I would recommend you keep it in 0.66, because this is the number where the quality is, you can say, almost same, but the size just reduces drastically. So let me check once more. Yes, it has reduced again, right? So I would recommend you keep this value as 0.66. Okay, so guys, this is it. We have reached the end of this video, and since this is my very first video on YouTube, it may not be perfect, but if you all have gained some knowledge regarding how to make an image cropper using React Easy Crop, please make sure to like this video and also subscribe my channel, because in the near future I will be uploading more videos related to full stack web development. And yeah, this is it. See you on my next video. Bye bye, take care, stay safe.